now. Hey now.
And those three gentlemen bring you a great podcast, everybody. Welcome to the Canada GP. This, of course, is the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. Rob, who were those fine gentlemen?
Well, they were the men, the myth, the legend. That was myself, yourself, and Pitlane Paul, who we will mention on numerous times this episode, because here we are recording this on Monday morning. My brain is frazzled, but I've woken up with the biggest smile on my face just thinking about that weekend, because absolutely insane. If you've seen the pictures online, you probably know what we got up to, but we're going to build up to that. I think we're just going to skip news and social, because the news was we were at the Grand Prix.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, so for anyone who's new, because we were talking to the whole world this weekend, normally we do a pretty structured news and social race review and a race preview. We'll have guests on, but today is a little bit self-indulgent. So if you're new and you don't find this to your liking, please give us one more try. But we were at the GP, and for both of us, it was our first time, and it was just epic. And we'd actually, quite honestly, recorded late Saturday night a bit about Friday and Saturday, and we had to delete it because Sunday just was insane. So we wanted to start fresh, right, Rob?
Yeah, we absolutely had to. And we were tired. I listened back to it, and you could just hear two guys that had walked 45,000 miles and were just both so shattered. So, yeah, we thought we'd give it another rock. So, it all started back on Friday as me and you made our way up to Montreal, you flying in from Chicago, me driving up from Connecticut. It was a race against time to try to get there for FP1 because, Brian's fault, United moved his flight back. So we were in big trouble of making FP1. We flew there. Brian arrived at the Airbnb. I'd already got here and checked in. He threw his trunk into the back of his rollerboard into the back of my trunk. We hot-footed it as fast as we could to the metro to ride on rubber-wheeled metro trains, which I still find weird, to get to the track, through security. And even though we were in a rush, we got across the bridge and we saw the track for the first time, Brian.
It was epic. When we saw just through the little window between what they'd blocked out in the trees, and we saw the track, and there were no cars going around yet. I have a picture of it, you have a picture of it. It was just like a magical moment. The sun was shining, the doves were flying. It was perfect. There were rainbows and unicorns, and we were at an F1 Grand Prix, and I still can't believe what just happened this weekend and how cool it was to go. And for me, a fan for a long time, it's been on my bucket list. I 100% recommend going if anyone has a chance or an opportunity. I recognize it's expensive, but it was so worth it. So just an amazing experience to be on the grounds. And we lucked out, right? Because FP1 ran a few laps, and then I think Pierre had a problem with his car. Then the closed circuit TVs went down, and they closed the rest of FP1 and added FP2. And so we really didn't miss much in the scheme of things, which really, for the first time, things went our way. And they went our way a lot after that.
Oh, they did, yeah. We made our way down to our seats. Hadn't appreciated how much water there is. I know that sounds stupid because the track's on the man-made island, but even inside the island, if that makes sense, is all the waterways and the lakes. And because of that, there's quite a lot of pinch points as you're trying to make your way down with about a gazillion other people. But we got there, got to our seats. Grandstand 1, we were in right opposite Ferrari and Red Bull garage, and the seats were amazing. They were absolutely amazing. We had full view of the track, of the pit lane in front of us. If we craned our necks to the left, as we would do a lot over the weekend, we could see the end of the straight, of the chicane into the Wall of Champions, and then we could watch them come all the way down, fly past us, and we could just about see the tip of turn 1 if we really kind of looked that way. And we were lucky that those huge screens were directly opposite, so we could basically, amazing.
Yeah, and there was something running I'd never heard of called Track TV, and Track TV it was new to me. It basically, on the screens, they show the race through coverage. They show the position on the side as you would on TV. And there's a commentator running, a couple commentators talking about the race. And it was great. We learned this during FP2, and it was sunny and hot. FP2 starts. We're watching Track TV. The gentleman's, he's the main guy, has a pretty good accent going. And he's doing a great job in both French and English, often switching between the two right as I was trying to figure out what he was going to say next. Oh, and we look at Magnussen coming around the corner, and all of a sudden he switched to French, and I'm like, what happened? And then we learned he didn't actually say Magnussen. He didn't say Sainz. What did he say, Rob?
He had great pronunciation of, we've been saying it wrong all these years. It's actually Carlos Sainz and Kevin Magnussen. Magnussen sounds like some kind of
Magnussen
evil
and
Marvel.
Sainz. Couldn't get enough
I
of
mean,
it. The whole weekend, every time, even during the race after the third day, when he'd say Magnussen into the corner, we would just die like giggling like little girls. I loved it. I loved everything about this. This was so great.
yeah, from hearing the cars for the first time, throttling past us was fantastic. Then when whose car let go and who had the external combustion?
Hulkenberg.
Was it Hulkenberg? Yeah,
Hulkenberg, Nico.
we actually smelt the external combustion engine, which was that was a different sensory moment of kind of not just hearing the cars but being able to smell them as well was absolutely insane. And everything was good at this point in terms of weather.
Yes, it was. A
Until
little
it
hot.
wasn't.
It was good, beautiful. The cars are running FP2. Like you said, I just want to add to that. The first time the cars went by at full chat was tremendous. Just the sound and the speed and for us, left to right of turning your neck to follow along what was going on. And then we started seeing cars come by together, like 2, 3 at a time. And you're like, they are so close together and they're going so fast. You don't get an appreciation for that on TV. It just seems, I don't want to say nonchalant that they're so close, but watching it like this was just, it was mind-boggling that they're going 200 some odd miles an hour and they're like 3 feet from each other.
I know you could almost feel the vibrations of the cars as they were going past. It was crazy. But one thing actually we just forgot there was that as we were watching them all trundle out for FP2, we got caught up in the whole, oh look, there's Alonso, and watching all the cars go out of the pit lane, out of the pit lane, out of the pit lane, and whoever it was, the final car trundled out of the pit lane. Me and Brian almost both jumped out of our seat at the same time because we'd forgotten that while we were watching these cars trundle out the pit lane slowly, that whoever was first out, and it might have been Bottas, is obviously now herring around it and is going to come screaming past us in about 1 minute 28, which we'd completely forgotten about as we were watching these other ones just trundle out and join the race. And as he screamed past us, we were both kind of like, whoa, what the hell was that?
It was epic. It was epic, and FP2 was fun. We were tracking along with who was doing what and what the times were. And then we hear the announcement, rain on track in 10 minutes, rain on track in 10 minutes. And we're like, oh, that's not good. So amazingly, as Rob and I have recapped a little bit, having had experience near bodies of water, when we saw a bunch of seagulls flying up from behind the paddock, we're like, that's bad. And then this bizarre dandelion fluff just coated the track and it was coming through the stands. Like, what is this? What it was
Never
the
known that as
precursor
a
of
precursor to
of the
rain.
apocalypse. Yeah. No, not rain. It was apocalyptic rain. At first it was fine. We bailed out with about 5 minutes left in FP2, figuring who's going to run on inters. Apparently teams did in that short time. And we got into one of the pinch points Rob described, the crowds. It was rain. It was more than drizzle, but it wasn't monsoon yet until we reached the Concord Bridge, crossing the St. Lawrence over a very angry St. Lawrence River. And the
River
rain
was angry that day, my friend.
Yes, sir. Like old man sending back soup at a deli. And so the rain somehow went up my poncho and up my shorts. How did that happen? I don't understand how. It was so bad. Oh,
It was so wet. I haven't been that wet in a very long time. It was just like, I think you actually stay drier in a shower. When you take a shower at home, you actually stay dry. It was insane. And then we got back to the metro, and our choice of location for where we were staying actually came to our benefit, as it would for the rest of the weekend, because we weren't staying downtown where all the hotels are because we're too cheap and we couldn't afford to remortgage our houses to take a hotel room. So we were staying on the other side, other side of the river, in an Airbnb, and almost everybody as we arrived in the metro is wanting to turn left and go to downtown, and we went to our direction on the line, and literally we probably stood with 20, 30 people on our side of the platform. We looked at the other side trying to set a Guinness World Record. How many people can you get on a platform?
Yeah, the only challenge is we should have done a better job buying our tickets in advance or whatever. We waited in a lot of lines, a lot of queues for the metro tickets.
If anyone does go to Canada next year, top tip there is the weekend pass on the metro is definitely the way to go. But if you go on the Friday, you can't get it until, I think they said, after 4 p.m. So if you do that, and you don't do what me and Brian did, which is get a single into the track on the Friday morning thinking, we'll buy our weekend pass when we leave because it'll be quiet. We'll be able to get to the ticket machine. Yeah, you can't. Just buy the return ticket on the Friday and then buy yourself a weekend pass because that was a painful lesson waiting to buy that ticket.
It was. It was. So before we talk about Friday night, I'd like to say that this portion of the episode, we'd like to say thank you to Lynn for the access to the tickets. The seats were amazing. I know you're going next year. If you ever don't want them in the future, let Rob and I know. Just the location was great. Grandstand 1, Section 6, just overlooking, as Rob said, the best area. So thank you, Lynn, for the opportunity to do that. And now, Friday night.
Friday night. 1 second, I just realized, I'm just looking at the notes here, and we forgot the best joke that we heard all weekend as we were coming over the bridge.
Yes, we did. I'm sorry.
Go on, you tell it, because it really tickled you. We both laughed, but you loved it.
Well, we turned the corner in a monsoon off the bridge, and there are two guys selling T-shirts. As guys selling T-shirts do, they have a rhyme and a jingle, and they're selling, Ferrari merch, and it's $20 for a T-shirt, clearly aftermarket T-shirts. And the guy's like, pre-washed T-shirts. We got dry ones in the bag. I mean, I can't explain to you. They looked like wet dogs, the people selling them, and the shirts. I mean, I couldn't even tell it was a T-shirt. It looked like a towel at this point. It was just
awful.
A mess.
Obviously, he didn't want to bother getting another dry one out of the bag, so he's just holding that thing, and it's just getting heavy.
Pre-washed.
But yeah, then you're right. Then we headed downtown Montreal on Friday night, and we maybe drank a little bit too much beer.
We did record the Hey Now intro with Paul, Rob, and Brian.
After a few beers.
Yeah.
That guitarist was awesome, though. He was absolutely amazing, which we heard in the back of the Hey Now then. But it was so cool just to have the three of us together. Obviously, you two have never even met before.
Nope.
So that was just so cool, just kicking back. And yeah, me realizing that I'm not cut out to do that late night stuff anymore like I was as a lad. Whatever it was, 2 a.m. when we rolled in, that hurt. Saturday morning hurt quite a lot.
Yeah, there were some cobwebs. But we made it in. We metroed in, grabbed our tickets. Again, at this point, we got our weekend. It was quiet in the downstairs, but the upstairs ticket queue was still bad. Drizzling, but we thought it would just drizzle all day, right? We're like, yeah, all right, this won't be bad. I walked in, Mr. Tough Guy. I don't need the poncho. I'm going T-shirt all day with a hat. I'll live. And we get FP3 going. And Yuki went out quickly, and it's raining, and he spun twice on the first couple attempts to really get the traction down. And as we're watching this, and as we're walking, something dawned on us about the track. First of all, it's a great track. It as Rob said, the island is beautiful. We walked, 8-9 miles a day, just exploring. We did a whole track walk on Saturday as well, all around it, all the way around the circuit, and it was a lot of fun. But we'll come back to FP3 in a second. It's tough for general admission. Something we learned. Yeah. They really block a lot of the good views with like the blue fencing material, like a nylon mesh fencing they put on top of the fence so you can't see in certain areas. And so they really kind of push GA to little spots.
Yeah, they do. It's like you were walking around thinking, if it wasn't for this blue mesh, I'd really be able to see a good view of this corner. But you're at the side of a grandstand, and I get it. There'll be two facets to this. One will be safety. They don't want any Nick DeVries to come through the fence, so they're going to put that mesh up to make it safer. But that mesh could still be it's dark blue, and we found some areas where guys were just trying to find a spot for general admission. They were hunkering down like all day, and their views weren't fantastic. But I guess they're there to make money. They want people in the grandstands, but do feel a little bit bad. And I've seen stories this year that Silverstone has sold off whole bunch of land where one of the classic general admission areas were. They've sold it off for Ponzi houses that are going to get built there with ridiculous views of the track. It's just taking it away from the kind of the regular fan, right? So I did feel bad about that when we did that lap. I mean, walking the whole lap was fantastic. Going through kind of the monster arena where they got the rock band going, the guy that was trying to do AC/DC. Oh my gosh, he was so funny. We saw the World Drivers' Championship trophy.
That was so cool.
Yeah, just loads of stuff like that. There's just so much going on, so much of a vibe and an atmosphere. It's just fantastic just to wander around. And of course, we're wearing our T-shirts, so we've got Bozos on tour, Dirty Side of the Track on the back, and people are asking us about it. We're telling them about it. It was just weird, and this is going to sound stupid. We should have known going to an F1 race we were going to be surrounded by people that love F1.
Yes.
But then to be there and actually be surrounded by people that love F1, that you can talk to anybody about anything you want to for F1, whether it's the fact they were in a Checo hat or the guy with the giant Ferrari on his head. I mean, you can just stop people and chat, and they're just happy to talk F1 with you because you're in like F1 Nerdsville. It's amazing.
It is. The people walking in on Saturday behind us having conversations about what race is next and what happened at last week's race, or the last race, I should say. And the people in front of us talking about the tires that would be used over the weekend. I was in heaven. I mean,
you love that guy's tire hat.
I did. The tire hat. This guy was walking next to us. He had all three compound, soft, medium, and hard compound tires on his hat brim. It was so good. Like, I mean, little tires on his hat. It was amazing. Anyway, so
it ramped up, didn't it? Then it was quali, and we both kind of said, like, so far, free practice 2 and 3 have been great. It's been amazing to watch the cars flying around. But 2 things happened in quali. A, it was noticeably busier. More people turned up than had turned up for the practice session. And there was like this excitement, like it was palpable. It was, you could tell that something, like, it meant something now. As we all know, which is stupid to say because I watched Formula One for years, but we all know that quali means something. But you could feel it, different energy in the crowd. It was fantastic.
It really was, and we got real racing. There was a light drizzle for Q1, and it had rained all day, and I had to break out the poncho. Sorry, I tried to be tough, but in FP3 it got real wet, and so it was great. So as I said, we lost some interesting drivers throughout all this. No crazy upsets in Q1, but then in Q2 we lost Charles and Checo. And it rained, and it rained, and it rained. But the cool thing was, as we started Q2, and shout out to the Track TV commentator, he said, I bet someone will come out on slicks real fast and try to get a lap in on slicks before it rains anymore. And what I'd not appreciated is you can literally watch the driving line dry on the track. As they're coming down the straight, they're all going over the same line. And you can see that part of the track dry, and all the rest is still very wet. And so as Q2 started, Albon put in, he came out on slicks, Max did as well, a few others, but Albon topped Q2 because of that early soft tire slick run, and it was amazing. And then the rain came back and covered up the dry line, but it was cool.
It was, and like you say, it's again something that you've seen 100 times, million times on TV watching it, the dry line on the track. And you're like, well, yeah, of course it dries because they're driving over it. But like you say, we could literally almost watch them peeling the water off the track as they were going past and leaving a dry line behind them. And kudos to them for going, we might just get away with a lap or 2 before the rain comes back. And although the excitement in the crowd when Albon stuck at the top.
Everyone went nuts. Went nuts.
Didn't matter what they were wearing, whether they were wearing Red Bull merch, Ferrari merch. When Albon threw it up there, it was just like this collective cheer. It was fantastic.
I've often said, who doesn't like Alex Albon? Not everyone's a fan.
Right here on this pod.
Yeah, but who could actively dislike Alex? I don't get it. I don't think there's anybody. I think everyone's either at worst mediocre on him, or at best says, yeah, I appreciate this guy. So I loved seeing that happen. It was a lot of fun to watch him do that in Q2. And as we said, Max was right behind him, and I'm over here yelling, freeze it right there. Let's let's get real wet for Q3 and cancel it. Let's use that as the grid. But we did get some excitement in Q3, right? We got some really interesting runs on inters at the beginning of Q3, which is going to be important because at the end of Q3 it rained so hard we had to go to full wets, and no one came out on full wets because they knew they weren't going to best their inter time before that, which meant we had a pretty interesting grid.
We did, and I'm not going to sit here and be picky about little bits of the weekend that weren't perfect, but now I will. I loved it. I did love quality. It was amazing. It was a little bit disappointing that because the order of the rain that came down, if they'd have started Q3 on wets and it had dried and gone to inders, we would have had that big Grand Slam showcase finish at the end of quali. But we all knew midway through, as soon as that rain came down and they had to go and put the blue stripes on, we were like, well, this is it. And it started raining heavily, and we were like, are we going to stay here and wait to watch this? But we were there for it.
We were. And so not only did we stay and watch it, and a couple other last couple notes on the F1 quali. So Carlos, let me make sure I pronounce it right now, Sainz got that 3 grid penalty for impeding, which was clearly impeding. I mean, he was just tootling along at the chicane by the Wall of Champions when Pierre's coming in on a flyer. I don't know, again, what happened or why he didn't. We obviously didn't have all the team radio, but did people not tell?
Yeah, I've seen exactly. We didn't get the team radio, which is kind of we did. So
a little
we
bit,
do,
pieces,
but depending on when a car is happening to go past, dictates whether we can hear what is being said on team radio. So I've seen some stuff online since they're kind of blaming the team for not telling they were coming, but then a lot of people are going, but the guy's got mirrors. I mean, he hung out in the middle of the apex with his handbrake on.
He basically did. He basically did. And Hulk also got one for a red flag infraction for speed. So Hulk's second place on the grid, which was amazing, and we were excited about, dropped him down to fifth. And then we had Fernando and Lewis. So that was fun. But Rob and I stuck around because had already taken 5 swims in the amount of rain we'd been in. We're like, what's a little more rain? And we'd also learned the crowd was a lot greater than we'd anticipated. So we decided, you know what? We're gonna hang out here, and we're gonna watch the F1600 race go by. And it's a smaller car. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a shrunken down car with wheels that stick out from the sides. There's no wing in the front. In front of the wheels, it was just like a bathtub with big wheels, and they were going pretty fast. I'm guessing about 120. Thin wheels, exactly. They looked like spare tires, space saver spares. But these people are just sending it in these cars, and we developed a couple favorites. Couple favorite cars we liked. Yeah, 67 of, I believe, is, after doing a little bit of internet research, of Megan. I forgot her last name. But I actually did find, I think she's in the academy. So this could be way off, but it doesn't matter. She was great. And car 16, who I could not find the name of, both of them had a little trouble getting started on Saturday night's race. And 67, the crowd got behind 67 to just cheer on 67. Like literally the grandstands were going nuts. And 16 was Rob's favorite. Ended up binning it about 2 laps in, caused a safety car, but was really going for it. And watching these races was amazing. And I'll say one last thing. The thing that really surprised me is I didn't appreciate that the next morning on Sunday when we got back to the track, they were doing another F1600 run. And it was the same people. And 16 had fixed their car. And we were standing on the sidewalk. We met a guy named Luis. And we just started cheering for 67 and 16 again. And people around us picked up on our vibes. It was great.
We got the whole section going for 67 again. It was like the 67 fan club. It was awesome.
We are. Oh, God, racing is just so great, man. It's just so great.
I mean, even those Ferrari, we didn't really hang around and watch all of the Ferrari challenges, but they were pretty cool, watching those kind of big style, GT style Ferrari cars going. They were pretty cool. But what happened in between those two pieces? Brian mentioned going back to the track and seeing F1600 again. We were hanging out watching this F1600, but we also really couldn't concentrate very well because we had the most amount of nervous energy coursing through our body because of a WhatsApp that had come through on Saturday night while we were out at dinner. Very nice little burger joint, actually. Don't remember, Jack Astor, name of it, wasn't it? There we go, a little shout out for Jack Astor. Not sponsored anyway,
yeah,
but
half the lights were out, but all right.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. The neon needs some work on the outside. Anyway, we sat there munching burgers and drinking beer, and Paul sends a WhatsApp through saying, "Get to the track for 10:30. I'll come and meet you at this location," and drop a Google Map pin drop. And we look at it and we're like, that's the bridge that all the fancy Paddock Club people get to walk over. It's the single point of access to get across to the hallowed other side of the track. Not the dirty side of the track, the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't know what was happening. No, he told us not to dress poorly, I'll say.
He didn't use those words, but yes, he told us not to dress like... yes. I don't know what he thought we were going to turn up like, but then we got a little bit nervous. So we were like, well, this is the T-shirt we're planning on wearing. It was, we got a dirty side of the track logo on the front, and then we got all 23 racetracks printed on the back. So we're like, can we wear this? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. So, okay, we really don't know what this is going to be. So we're stood by this bridge. We're doing a great little bit of advertising for the pod, by the way, because I'm facing Brian. So people who are walking behind me are seeing all the racetracks on the back of my shirt and kind of stopping and looking back and seeing I've got the same thing printed on the front of mine that Brian has because, yep, we were twins. We got a lot of eyeballs on there, so we'll see if anyone actually listens because of that.
And again, just so anyone knew, this is a little bit of a different review than normal, but we did interview Valtteri, and you can go find that on our website, dirtysideofthetrack.com.
You should have saved that for about 5 minutes' time when we get to the next part of the story.
Oh, don't worry. It'll come back.
So then we see Paul arrive. There's all the fancy people going in with their paddock passes, and Paul comes out in his Alfa Romeo uniform and hands us two paddock passes, and we're like, oh, they put them on. It was quite nice looking at other people, and we were walking by going, who are those guys? Why are they getting?
Not only that, it says on the back, guest of Valtteri Bottas. And I'm like, we are? And just again, in case anyone doesn't know, we've had Valtteri on the pod.
This is Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
Yeah, Valtteri.
And then we turned the corner, and then I regressed to a 13-year-old version of myself as I saw the F1 entry gates. And Paul goes through and pops his on, and up pops his face and comes up as verified, and through he goes. And then we walk up and we got to tap it on. I'm still waiting at this point that I'm going to tap this thing and it's going to go.
Not allowed. Access denied.
And we weren't. And we were in. And we were in the paddock. And I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to explain anything about what happened now to any kind of degree of accuracy, because my brain turned into mush at this point. It was just insane. We're walking down. He's there's Williams's hospitality. There's the back of their garage, and we're walking down, and you got the Sky Sports crew walking around with the cameras. It was just, I got nothing. What you got, Brian?
I mean, I would say this portion of the episode, we'd like to thank Paul. Paul, man, thank you for doing that for us. You said it was, not a big deal and all these other things to be nice to us. But, man, like, that was so kind, and it blew our minds, our puny little brains. But so we're walking along, and Paul's talking to half the paddock. He knows everybody because he's been there a bit, and he's a friendly guy. They're giving him grief, and he's giving them grief. And Rob and I are wearing our massive Dirty Side of the Track logo T-shirts, and people are like, what the hell is that? And they're staring at him. And then we see, oh, look over there at John Lacey. It's John Lacey. Hey, John Lacey. And we just keep walking. We're like, what is happening? And Paul walks us down, kind of shows us where all the teams are located, kind of the layout, and basically says, yeah, you're fine to take pictures of people, just don't bother anyone. And so we're like, we can do that.
Just walk.
Yeah, we can walk around.
Have we just got to sit in Alpha Hospitality then? Because he showed us, we sat us down there, got us a couple of free beers so that we didn't have to take out yet another mortgage to buy the $11 tiny cans of Heineken that were on sale. So no, we're now very lucky because we're sitting there with free beer, and we're kind of just like pausing just to take it in a little bit. And he's like, no, you can just go and walk. Just go wherever you want. You're not allowed to go in the garages, but other than that, knock yourself out. Go up and down. Don't bother anyone. Everyone's happy to have people back here. They're not going to shout at you for being here, so just go hang out. And just as we went to go and leave, I can't even remember the order now, but just as we went to go off by ourselves, but Paul was there as well still, Jacques Villeneuve works past, and Paul stops and talks to him, and I kind of tap Paul on his back. I'm like, Paul. And Paul, bless him, fantastic. He says, hey, Jacques, remember these guys? You had them on, they had you on their podcast. He's like, oh, yeah, hi, guys. We shook his hand.
He was very friendly. I mean, I wanted to play this soundbite for him so he remembered.
This is Jacques Villeneuve, and you're listening to the Dirty Side of the Track.
I didn't. But he shook our hands, and he's like, oh, yeah, great to see you guys. I'm sure he didn't remember us. He does 100 of these a day, I'm sure. But, media requests. Sure. But it was so cool. And he was so friendly and nice. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. And then so we wandered back to the Alpha Hospitality area. We had this kind of table in the corner was our spot. And Paul then got us a second round of free beers, which was great. It was like 10:30 in the morning. I'm on my second free beer. It couldn't be any better. The hospitality people there were like still trying to figure out who these bozos were in the T-shirts, but we knew somebody, so they were very nice to us.
And then the funniest thing, so like, there were two shout outs over the weekend that went very different ways. I forgot that I was in a country that speaks French. So when our Uber driver turned up on Friday night and he'd gone the wrong way to pick us up, and I shouted across the street to get his attention, I saw it written on the Uber app as Jean. So I, for some reason, didn't compute that in France, or in French speaking country, that would be Jean. And I went with Jean. Jean across the road.
And I'm like, Rob, I think it's Jean.
So that was my embarrassing shout out, but that was my moment of an excitable shout out. Brian did one much better. His excitable shout out was as we're sitting there halfway through our second beer, he spies Nate Saunders walking through the paddock, who we've also had on the show.
And I don't have a sound for that. I apologize, Nate. I don't have a sound clip for that.
We need this. So ESPN's Nate Saunders is strolling through the paddock, and Brian just like I wasn't sure, I hadn't seen him. Brian just like raises up off his seat and he's like, Nate.
Nate! And I felt a little bad.
And startled, like,
who the hell's yelling like that? But then he like walked over and he saw our shirts and he put it all together, and he's met you before in person. So I couldn't have had more fun just chatting for what felt like 20 minutes or so with Nate and Paul. And
when you introduced Nate to Paul, like you connected together. You are a Paddock member now, Brian.
I'm like, Nate, this is Paul. Paul is Nate. And they, heard we talked to each other. And I mean, we got a picture of the four of us. And I'm like, this is possibly the coolest thing in the world. It just feels like we're not total idiots. And people are very nice to us. And we had fun. And anyway, it was just brilliant. But then,
then Paul says, you need to be down the end of the paddock. They're going to go for the drivers' parade soon. So if you go and station yourself down there, you'll probably see most of the drivers. You probably see most of them. We saw every single one of them walk within about 2 feet of us.
2 feet at most. And then they were handing out free food. They were handing out these things called beaver tails. So I'm literally, this is not a joke. I'm sitting there with one hand, my camera, my phone, with one hand, a beaver tail, which is kind of like a churro, but I guess Canadian style. It tastes very similar. And so we're sitting, it's flat like a beaver tail. And so we're sitting there, I'm munching away on a beaver tail, taking pictures of everyone walking 1.5 feet by. Max and Lewis and just everybody. Name a driver. I got it. And oh geez,
I know Paul bust my chops for. I got a little excited when the first driver turned up was George, right? and maybe my voice must have gone up an octave or whatever. I'm like, George, and Paul was just, oh, here we go, George. Oh look, it's George. I was like, hey, you see him every day probably, but this is a big deal to us. So,
it was almost like if you took this clip, George, but played it but a much higher pitch. George is George. But that's okay. I topped it about a second later as we sat there walking along, taking more pictures as drivers passed us. And I mean, literally, I'm standing there. I walk right past Logan Sargent, and then Albon comes up to him, and I take a picture of Albon, and then they're goofing around. And I didn't even realize that Sargent, I passed Sargent. So then I'm right next to I take a picture. We keep walking, and I see Nick DeVries. And I'm like, oh, I got to get a picture of Debris. And so I go to get a picture of Nick, and as I do, I'm so excited. I turn to Rob. I go, hey, it's got a picture of Nick DeVries. And again, quietly, we're doing this all, a little furtive. We don't look like silly boys. But as I do this, I put my arm out, and I punched a Ferrari mechanic in the face. And for that, I'm also sorry.
So he was so angry. Well, not angry, but his face, he didn't even see it coming. You turned around to show me the camera, and boff, this Ferrari mechanic. Sorry, Ferrari.
Sorry.
And so we thought that was now it. But no, Paul had got one more trick up his sleeve. He was like, well, now that they're all out doing the parade, then follow me. No pictures from this point onwards until I tell you can. I'm like, well, why? And he walked us through the Alpha garage, past Valtteri's car, out into the pit lane, took our picture in front of the car, and sent us off to just randomly wander up and down the pit lane doing whatever we wanted.
Unbelievable. It was unbelievable. People were doing practice pit stops with the car. They're rolling it into the pit box and doing the tire changes. We got videos of that. We got pictures of that. We walked literally from head to tail a couple times on the pit stop. It was just, under the pit lane, excuse me. It was just amazing. Every garage is open. Cars are out. People are working in their areas. And it was just, I can't describe it. We go by the AlphaTauri garage, and one of the mechanics is standing there with the steering wheel, and he's like, he wants people to check it out. I'm like, this is so cool. So he's, steering wheel. You want to see steering wheel? And I'm like, yes, I want to see steering wheel. And so we took a picture of it. I mean, it was the greatest thing. And I even called my wife. I'm like FaceTiming from there. I'm like, look where I am. We took pictures of our seats. We could see our seats across the track. I mean, my brain still doesn't work.
The little mini Haas pit lane, pit wall box that's has about enough space to sit 2 people in there. Versus then you get further down the grid, and they're a little bit bigger and a bit more fancy. And then Paul had said to us, I mean, I think we could have stayed there and watched the race from the Alpha Hospitality, but like he said to us, he said, look, you don't want to do that. He said, because then you're just watching it on TV. That's what I'm going to be doing. He said, it's bizarre how many people in F1 work alongside the racetrack. That's their career. They work in F1, but most of them never see a race, not in the flesh, because they're all on the paddock side of it, in the garages, in the whole milling around in the paddock behind. So they're watching it on big screen TVs. He said, you're gonna have a much better time watching it from your seats. And we were like, okay, cool. So he ushered us out.
Wait, one last person we ran into on the way out. So Paul is talking to of someone he knows well. A gentleman you may have heard of named Gordon Ramsay. And so Gordon and Paul are giving each other a hard time, and they're just chatting for a while. And we're standing behind Paul like children. trying to figure out what to do and not look like we don't know what we're doing. And we did a great job of it because we didn't know what to do, and it looked like we didn't know what we were doing. But Gordon Ramsay walks over to me immediately after talking to Paul. He goes, "Hey, I'm Gordon Ramsay. Nice to meet you." And he just shook my hand because I was standing there with Paul. And then he walks over to Rob and he goes, "You must be British." And no, I'm just kidding. He goes, "Hey, I'm Gordon Ramsay. Nice to meet you." And so it was like all of this was so surreal. And then we walked out, and I have to be honest. I think the tone or the pitch of our voice when we walked out and started walking back to the stairs to go to our seats was an octave below breaking glass. We were so excited. Did this just really happen? Oh my God, that was amazing.
It was. And then all of this had happened, and I didn't think I'd got any, I don't know, I think my body didn't know how to produce adrenaline anymore at this point, because it was just like, it was trying to tap out, going, I can't make any more for you. You're done. And then we get back to our seats, and it's the countdown to lights out, and the grid is full, and the grid walk's going, and suddenly I'm getting this second hit again of like, oh my God, as amazing as all of that was, and it was absolutely brilliant. We still haven't even watched the race yet.
I know.
And, just watching that grid walk from right beside it, watching the various different news channels going up and down, and TV covering it, the way that, watching all the drivers walk up to the front for the national anthem and then drop back down again. It was just, that was brilliant. And then the countdown starts for the formation lap.
So cool. I mean, I'll say this. I just seeing all the activity on the grid was just shocking. And I don't mean the people, I mean the energy. Just the amount of energy in the stands. People are getting so excited. Everyone around us was just so pumped. It was, I said this many, many times on here, but the F1 community is so amazing, so welcoming. And, like you said about Alex's Q2, and everyone got real excited for him and started cheering when Albon did this. Everybody out there was just excited with each other to watch the F1 race occur in front of us. And they go around the formation lap, and they come back up.
Just before they start the formation lap, when it gets down to like the 5 seconds for formation lap, and all the tire blankets come off, and the mechanics leave, and all the engines fire up, like all together, ready to go. That noise was amazing. I could feel that noise when all 20 cars were pumped and ready to pull off. I thought that was the biggest noise I was ever going to hear, but
until they go around, come back, line up in their grid spots. On TV we always talk and watch, and the commentators mention how the last car can sometimes slowly get to the grid for the lights to turn on, and felt like it took forever. But when Max pulled up, got into his grid spot, I mean, I literally didn't know what to do. I was like, dude, what is happening? This is going to happen. And they start lining up behind him, and then lights out, and away we go. And you said the sound was just amazing.
20 cars all putting their foot down at the same time. I actually feel like it kind of took the skin off my face. The vibrations. You could feel it as they went. And then I've got to be honest, it is a blur. We'll try and pick some pieces out that we remember from the race now. But I remember talking to you, I think it was lap 67, going, how is this almost over? it was just, I don't even know if it was a great race or not, because it will be absolutely skewed by the fact that we were there. And watching them come round. And I know me sat at home would have probably been a bit, not annoyed, but we talk about the DRS trains all the time.
That was a big one at the end.
And for a big stint of probably the last third of the race, we had that whole Valtteri in the DRS train. But when you're watching them come past and they're all so close, you're almost convinced they're going to overtake them every single corner. So you forget about it and you get caught up in the whole thing. And there were some great moves earlier on. The crowd went nuts when, you nailed this, right? We didn't hear any booing, and everybody seemed to be supportive of everybody. Obviously, Fernando is a crowd favorite, but Lewis is as well. So when Lewis got Fernando right at the beginning, the place went insane.
Right, but then Fernando gets him back, and the place went insane.
They were equally happy. I think the crowd also just want to see overtakes. I think Lando Norris was on a mission to entertain the crowd because he seemed to be overtaking every left, right, and centre. Now, it would probably be that he only overtook 2 people. My brain thinks he overtook the entire field twice.
Piastri had one, Norris had a bunch, and obviously he had a penalty that he was working off. I mean, yeah, I think if I'd watched this at home, I would have given this a high-medium kind of score, is my guess. Max, he built a 4-second lead before the safety car, and then rebuilt a larger lead. And he did this apparently with a bird in his brake duct. I don't know if you saw that this morning.
Yeah,
a bird flew in.
Yeah.
They peeled it out in the garage. It looked disgusting. he did all that with a bird in there. And then, you had, like you mentioned, the Fernando and Lewis battle. But outside of that, the big highlights were Ferrari going with a one-stopper and got themselves out of whatever they were, 11th and 12th or 10th and 11th, up to 4th and 5th. And
who knew that we were going to be there when Ferrari made a good call?
I mean, they should bring us to every race.
Well, and Valtteri ended up in the points.
Yes,
so
he did. And Albon was
race.
7th. Albano. I mean,
And Albon should bring us to every race.
Exactly. Albon, I thought, was, for me, like the driver of the weekend. Just the whole weekend was amazing. And like you said, Valtteri in the points. That train was a fascinating one to watch. Lando, they announced he'd had a penalty, but you lose track of that. And so when he crosses the line, like, oh no, Valtteri's not in the points. But then we watch the board change and Lando drop. We're like, what is Lando dropping for? Oh, the penalty. I mean, so like, you had to remember that. And he actually sent it. I don't know if people ever got a chance to see it, but he sent it on the last chicane by the Wall of Champions, trying to make up a spot, forgetting I forgot he had the penalty. So it wouldn't have stuck anyway in terms of position. But it was just so cool. We could see to our left as these cars are coming to that chicane, and then as they go by, and all the different times we had wheel to wheel in front of us, which was amazing. We had a lot of AlphaTauri and Haas battles. Obviously, we lost Logan early, and George had a day to forget. But it was just tremendous.
You mentioned that when George smashed into that wall and he returned to the pit lane, we watched his wheel go for a little trip down the rest of the pit lane. You were like, "Oh my gosh, his wheel's loose!" And it was just freewheeling.
His tire just kept going. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool to be right opposite that. And actually, also just watching pit stops in real time was all, you can track and see them coming down the pit lane. Oh, here comes a Ferrari. In he comes right in front of us. We could not have been any more central in front of that Ferrari pit stop. I loved it.
We saw both what I still think were unsafe releases. We saw Lewis come in and cut off Fernando, and then we saw who cut off Lando. I can't remember who it was.
Another car.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank now at this point. But like literally, we saw both of them occur in front of us on the pit lane, and the whole crowd was like, "Whoa!" As we were watching this happen, and you didn't even know how close it was until they did the replay. But man, it was just like you said, I think I'd probably give this a high medium or medium kind of score. It was, but it was a perfect 10 in person. I wouldn't have changed a thing. I loved it. The podium celebration. We'll get to that in a second, but we could see the podium from our seats.
Oh, yeah, we didn't need to go and try and do the track invasion to get
Well, not yet. We do that later.
Yeah, we do that later. But yeah, watching the podium come out and seeing Nui up there and the three drivers and the anthems
4 goats.
and the champagne.
4 goats. Max, Fernando, Lewis, and Nui.
Champagne spraying and like bizarrely, even hearing the music that they play when the champagne is getting sprayed, just like amazing to hear it being there as well. That was just the whole thing I enjoyed. And then that was it, really. It was kind of down your seat and breathe. And then face the task of trying to get out of this place. A gazillion people tried to leave at the same time. Or go and park yourself in a beer garden and drink yourself stupid until they throw you out of the
Literally.
park because they're closing.
Yeah, not just the beer garden. They threw us out of the circuit. The whole park, it was closed. How do you like school, Jimmy? Closed. And that was it. They're like, you got to go. We met a lot of amazing people.
We did. I've tried to keep track of all the people I said we tried to give people out. So when we first trucked up to the beer garden. Well, actually, we caught up with these guys twice, but we've been trying to catch up a number of times with the guys. You'll know that I go down to, there's a sports bar, the Iron Horse in the town just over from me. And we've kind of got F1 community going where we pitch up early and watch races. 4 of the guys there, Kat, Melissa, Sam, and Jeff, they were going as well. So we're like, okay, cool, we'll meet up. And it sounds an easy thing to arrange, and there's so much going on. People are sat in different places. The rain didn't help on the other days, so we kind of text them and we're like, right, where are you? And they were like, we're in the beer garden. I'm like, well, we're in the beer garden too. We're right by the giant Heineken sign. Sorry, no, that's a different set of people. Oh my gosh, my brain's melting. These guys, where are you? We're in the beer garden. So we make our way through there. We decide not to go through the main entrance. We found a little kind of like, there's lots of places in this where you can just cut through, go through a hole in a fence, go through a bush, whatever it is. So we cut through this hole to get into the beer garden. And who should be walking directly towards is the 4 of them. So we just kind of stopped. We drank many beers and just hung out. It was, they got completely I won't say freaked out. What's the right word, Brian? Of hearing your voice. They've heard your voice loads on the podcast, but they've never heard it come out of.
Well, it was just
a
confusing to
human's
see
mouth.
a person who owns that voice being a real person. I had the best time meeting the Iron Horse crew. I mean, they were just tremendous. I laughed so much and drank so much, and it was just so much fun to spend some time with people. I still shocked anybody would hang out with you. So like I don't get it. They're too nice to hang out with you. Like, but if you can punch above your weight like that, then good for you, Rob.
Yeah. Then they had to leave because, again, for anybody interested in going, they went on the F1 Experiences program. So they highly recommend that if anyone's looking to go to check out the F1 Experiences stuff. So they went off to get their bus back, and we plowed on in. We met father and son, Jody and Jake. We chewed their ear off for a while because I think hadn't they lived like where you somewhere in Tampa?
Basically everybody's lived near me at one point.
It's bizarre. Everyone we meet has lived in Tampa, and then you mention the school that you went to, and then they'll all go, "Really?" I'm like, how can so many people have come to that one tiny little place and seem to know it? But it keeps amazing me every time it happens. So they said they're going to give us a listen, which is nice. Might even be able to convince his son to come on and do 100 seconds of DRS in the future. And then we congregated around what was becoming the Tower of Cans.
The pyramid, a beer pyramid. It was a pyramid. Well, I've built these in my life before, but these fellas had started, and they had a very expensive pyramid going. Those are all $11 each.
Cans there, a lot of dollars in that. Yeah, it was huge. It was just at this point. We were drinking way too much, but I was having way too much fun. I didn't want it to stop. It was great, and we were just bumping into folk. I think the really tall guy that could actually reach the top of the pyramid was called Chris. So if you are called Chris, hey Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I chatted with 3 guys, and I doubt they remember my name. I don't remember theirs. I'm not good with names, but I had the best time. Like I honestly, like every time we met new people. And it wasn't like a hi, how you doing, and then walk away. It was like a 10-minute conversation about where you're from, what drivers do you like, how long you liked F1. And it's like just the nicest group of people in the world.
Yeah, it really was. It was. And then as we were getting kicked out of the park, we walked back to Metro with 4 guys that were great. Michael, Steve, Ed, and Mark. Can't remember which one of you looks like Bill Murray, but one of you is an absolute spitting image of Bill Murray. So we basically walked back to the Metro, which was nice.
And we were alone. At this point, this was the only time all weekend we didn't have a group of 10,000 of our best friends around us at all times. We literally were the last people to cross the bridge.
I think we were the last people out of the circuit. We crossed that bridge. The dude that was manning the security thing had started putting the fences up to close the whole thing down, and we had to squeeze through them to get out. And he kind of looked at us going, still people in the track? Oh, the track. We didn't even mention the track. We got carried away there on the walk back to the beer garden. It was properly savage. Like we were stood still for 20 minutes and we were just going nowhere. I looked to the right and people spilt out onto the track to watch the podium. They're all just walking down the track, like saying to Brian, like, they can't all be that dumb that there's no way to get back onto off the track and onto the main, back into the beer garden. So let's give it a go. So we did. My most under pressure moment was when we had to jump through the hole in the fence.
And you have like 30 people on each side watching you, waiting for you to go.
Gosh, waiting for you to fall. So I think I did my best Spider-Man, like straight through. I thought I did pretty well to parkour my way through.
Yeah.
Better than the dude in front of us that spent like 2 minutes just trying to like climb over because he was so drunk he could barely stand.
I mean, and you know what? I got to say this too. A lot of families were doing this with their kids, and everybody was very respectful, gave everybody time. I was a little shocked at that. I figured by this point of the day, people would be pushing and shoving, not a single bit as we waited to go through this tiny little hole in the fence. I threw my backpack through first. One guy tried to keep it on and kind of got messed up by doing that. So another top tip, if you're going to try to shoot yourself through the little hole in the catch fence at an F1 circuit, put your backpack through first.
I'm trying to get through. The guy that went through before me, he was a big guy, and he basically did the splits to get through, rather than like jump through like everyone else. He goes through, he's like, yeah, that's my hamstring. But then we were on the track. That was amazing. Walking on the track was fantastic. Just kind of being where the cars had been like an hour earlier was cool. So that was that. Metro was empty. Got back. Despite the fact that I think we were both feeling pretty tired and probably could have just at that point. We thought we can't miss out on the last night. We tidied ourselves up, got into some clean clothes, headed straight back downtown. I'm so glad we did. There's an area down there, Crescent Street. They close off to traffic, and it just becomes a one party zone.
Literally was like there was kinds of tents and booths all up and down the street. There's all the bars are open, restaurants are open, and then there's a stage at the end of it where a band was playing. They had
U2 tribute act. They were good.
They were
good.
That was
amazing.
Yeah, and then we met up with the your crew of folks from the Iron Horse again, and had a couple more beers and just had a lot of laughs and then we all kind of looked at each other like, yeah, we're all tired now. It like hit everybody kind of at the same time. It was
at
like
the same time. This wave went through everybody's like, we're all tapping out. Right?
Yeah, it was late. We got back. I slept like a baby. Man, just what a weekend.
You know, we've been building this up for about a year now that we knew we were coming to Cannes. And along the way, I've had different perceptions of what it might be like there. And, oh, yeah, it's going to be loud. Is it going to be really any better than watching it on TV other than yet to hear them and fly past you once a lap? My God, I couldn't have even imagined. Right, let's just break this into two different pieces. The normal F1 experience of going to a race, being with the fans, the whole crescendo building through the weekend of practice into quali into race was just absolutely amazing. And as was hanging out with everybody drinking beer afterwards, that whole piece was more than I could have ever hoped for. So given that bit was more than I could have hoped for, Paul, you are an absolute legend for getting us in, because that was just the best thing ever. I don't even have words to describe it.
Well, so we had a joke, Rob and I did, Saturday night when we were hanging out after 2 full days of rain. You know, it started nice on Friday, but then it turned into rain all night, and then rain on Saturday all day, sitting in the rain all day. I joked we'd gone from being F1 virgins to F1 porn stars, because you got the whole experience. We got 4 seasons. We saw the race, the quali and everything. We'd walked, 20,000 steps a day. We'd been everywhere. We explored the circuit. We'd paid $9 for a hot dog and $11 for a beer, but we brought food with us and little foil balls, and Rob's eating baguettes made out of who knows what with inside, and so it was epic. But Sunday, what Paul did, getting us in, and then watching our first race in person, meeting all these people at the beer garden, being kicked out of the circuit last. We drank every drop of life this party had for us this weekend. And I just, before we play Paul's review, which will be the last thing we do, we'll let him play us out. I want to say thank you to everybody who's listened to the pod over the year and a half we've been doing this. Thank you to Lynn for the opportunity. Thank you, Paul. Thanks to everybody we met and the kindness of strangers who just came up and said hi, some of them handing you a beer, which cost $11, and they're handing them out. Just thank you to everybody who was willing to have a chat. It was the coolest thing. And like you said, been building it up for a while. Not only did it live up to it, it exceeded it. And even if we didn't know Paul, and even if we hadn't had that opportunity in the paddock, it still would have exceeded my expectations. So imagine how much more it did with what happened.
Absolutely, and that's kind of my sentiment. Is if you've never been and you want to go, it didn't need the pool bit to make it an absolutely brilliant weekend, but it took it into the stratosphere because he did. So, so appreciative. Can't say thanks enough. And being as we didn't really watch the race we did, but we didn't make any notes. We really don't know that we did a very good race review. We could probably hand it over to Paul to give us the view of the weekend, and we'll catch you next week. I don't even know what we're doing next week.
I don't either. But everybody, thank you again so much. Paul, thank you. Play us out.
Hey now. I've done a proper hey now this week. I've had the pleasure of Brian and Rob's company. We had a lovely night out, a few beers. Me and Brian succeeded in drinking those beers. Rob, however, turns out to be a little bit weak, claiming, of course, that he was drinking a stronger beer, but the actual level of liquid to be drunk remains the same, so I don't buy too much into that, but let's keep him happy. I think that's fair. That was Canada then. I think they had a good time. I got the guys into the paddock, gave them a bit of a look around at just how crazy this world is, and I think they both I think they enjoyed themselves. Don't get me wrong; they've probably harped on already on this podcast about that. But no, it was honestly a pleasure to have them. Canada, I won't lie, it's sort of the home of the beaver. And we all like beavers, whichever category of beaver we want to fall into. And they're very territorial and they defend against other family of beavers. So if there's a multiple beaver population, there'll be some scrapping beavers, there'll be some fighting beavers, there'll be beavers everywhere trying to rip each other to pieces. And they actually slap their tails against the water to warn other beavers of danger. So you can imagine a group of wet beavers whacking themselves together. It's a sign of danger. The beavers are a fantastic animal, and we see quite a lot of them. They walk around the track. They're broad and flat, large blackish scales. They're like quite a nice thing, And they travel good distances from their homes to find food. And so a bit like Rob and Brian, have travelled great distances to, spend about $15 on a small can of beer. A problem which I heard far too much of, I won't lie, the moaning and the whinging. And you'd have thought two people of the power of those two would have no issue with finances. However, there we go. Let's touch on the race. Friday was as exciting as ever. So on to Saturday. Saturday, right, qualifying. Look, the weather played its part, and it really screwed up a lot of people, including sadly ourselves for Valtteri. We were expecting a lot higher, but it was one of those situations, sadly, whereas you do your run like when the track's drying. So Albon took a massive gamble going on dries when he did in qualifying. But he was able to generate the heat in his tyres over the 3/4 of a lap that was actually dry. So he managed to get the sweet spot of timing in order to get his tyres to work, whereas some of the other dry tyre runners who went out maybe a lap later struggled, ourselves included. And then in credit, okay, it only gets you through to quali 2. It doesn't mean your pole position, but it worked out for them. It didn't work out for us. That was the gamble. I don't think if we'd have stayed on intermediates, we'd have gone much quicker. I think it was just one of those horrible sessions you have to overcome. And then the race, I want to try and get excited to you guys about the race. I really can't. I mean, there's not a lot really happened with it, was there? It was a bit, a bit of a follow around really. There, George Russell hitting the wall was, with the greatest way of wording this, a highlight. Alex Albon, absolutely stunning drive, but in a weird way, he actually spoilt the race. And when I say that, he just created a DRS train, and it's not his fault. It's the other teams and the other cars and drivers' jobs to have the power to get by him. And what you saw was the Mercedes engine actually had a lot of power, so he was able to fight them off on the straights. And a fantastic drive, and especially after the gamble I've just mentioned in qualifying, I think you have to give full credit to the guy for, that was stunning. Driver of the day for me. And apart from that, look, I don't know. There's talk of a penalty for Ocon for his wing. And by the time you probably hear this, we'll know the answer. And I personally, I hope not. I don't want to see that. I mean, it's not as if it fell off or was falling off. It was just a little bit wobbly. The only person really affected by that is Ocon himself. So I'd be quite upset if he does get a penalty. And I'm really hoping he doesn't. We're 3 hours after the race really here now, so I haven't heard anything, but whatever, let's hope not. And then really apart from that was really it. It was Max drove into the distance. There was a little bit of a fight between Alonso and Hamilton behind where were we, Ferrari. Do you know what, a great weekend for Brian and Rob, and I'm glad they enjoyed it. But as a race again, it was sort of a bit poor, I think. And after the way the grid was matched up for qualifying, I sort of expected a little bit more, and we didn't really get that. And but that's racing. Sometimes you have it good, sometimes you have it bad. So on to the next one, which is back to Europe. I now have a run of European races where I can spend a bit more time at home. It's been great to be out here. I always love coming to, let's say North America, whether it's Canada, whether it's the USA, it's always a special part. Brilliant to see the guys again. We had good fun. Great to have them in the paddock. I hope, I'm quite sure they bored you already with it, but it's a unique experience to do that. And it's not something that people take for granted. I know how much it meant to those guys. So pleasure to have you boys along. And then, I'm sure we'll see you at a race again soon, because the one thing with Formula One is when you go, you sort of get into a groove. So happy days.